Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Just a listener warning, this episode contains references to drug addiction and may not be suitable for all audiences. Everybody loves a comeback story, from the late Steve Jobs being fired from Apple, the company he started, and then returning to launch the iconic product like the iPhone, to basketball legend Michael Jordan coming out of retirement to lead the Chicago Bulls to 3 championships glory episodes. These are the stories of legends. There is something magical, inspirational, and remarkable about any underdog coming from behind to knock down Goliath and then become an icon. My guest today has a classic comeback story that involves struggles, personal demons, and corporate glory, then failure and ultimately success, which he enjoys today. Sean Castrina is a serial entrepreneur, speaker, and author. He's the founder of the Weekend MBA and host of the 10-Minute Entrepreneur podcast, a top 10 entrepreneurship podcast, as well as the author of 4 best-selling books. He's been featured in a range of media outlets such as Forbes, Inc., Money Magazine, as well as having an Instagram account with over 300,000 followers. We are going to chat today about the politics of comebacks, and I can't wait to get started. So welcome to my show, Sean.
It's great to be on the podcast.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since 2017, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one web-based solution to make the process quick and painless, the way podcasting should be. If you know me, I'm pretty obsessed with quality guests, quality content, and quality sound, and that's what Zencastr allows me to do. Not to mention, it's really easy to use, even for my guests that aren't particularly tech-savvy. There's nothing to download, they just click on the link and we start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-production all in the one tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get each episode done. I want you to have the same great experience that I do for all my podcasts and content needs. So I have a special offer for you. If you go to zen.ai/politics of everything and enter this promo code, you'll get 30% off in your first 3 months when you sign up to Zencastr Pro. That's zen.ai, politics of everything. It's now time to share your story. Excellent. So can you remember what your first paid job was? And that might have been in high school even. And kind of, did that set you up in any way for what was to come in terms of your corporate career and then your business career?
You know, I just knew I didn't want to be poor. So I'm going to start with that. But actually,
does anybody? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I tell you what, a lot of people are doing a really good job at it. But I remember I started a lawn mowing business, and I'm just going to parallel it because I had 2 jobs. So I had a lawn mowing business, and we got paid $3 to mow these townhouses. And what I would do is I would give my friend $2 and let him mow it, and I would make $1 watching him do it. I would just get the jobs, and I knew then at 13 that okay, this is how to do it. Like, okay, I'd rather make 1/3 and do nothing than have to actually do the work. And you know, I could just, all I had to do is get the accounts. And then I had a job working at like a fast food restaurant where I was getting paid by the hour. And I knew then I didn't like that at all. So I got a taste of, you know, the entrepreneurship idea, you know, as a teen. And then, you know, went off to college, got a typical job. I just figured I'd make a lot of money and be a CEO of a company. And, you know, that's how everything would go.
Absolutely. I love our childhood sort of innocence, if you like. I mean, I'm well into my 40s now, but I remember thinking when I was a teenager, I'd be retired by 40 and that, you know, and I'd just be on the Caribbean sailing and, you know, skiing wherever I wanted. But of course that didn't work out. So I want to also just touch on, I guess, a big topic, which is part of your story. You mentioned in your pitch to me that you've had prescription medication addiction, and that must have been very challenging. And it's a very common thing. So I don't think it's, you know, an elephant in the room for lots of people. And particularly we're well familiar with, you know, the crisis particularly in the States, around prescription medication and opioids and so forth. How did that sort of really kind of shape where you are today? Obviously, you've come back from that, and you
Yeah.
mentioned going cold turkey in, a week. I mean, that's pretty incredible, but not everyone will be able to do that. And I just want to just touch on this because I think it's a really
Yeah.
important part of the journey. People always talk about the success, but they often don't talk about the hardship.
Yeah, so I was a Division I college wrestler, so you got to kind of know that because I have a very tough mentality. If I set my mind to do something, I know I can. So, and that kind of probably led to having some back injuries. So in 2011, I'll never forget, I wake up and I have back pain. First time in my life. And, you start going to doctors and pain doctors. And, I ended up with a very reputable pain doctor, you would think. And it started out with just, with oxycodone. And then I realized I was prescribed 20 of those a day. Literally, they were like Tic Tacs. I used to
Wow.
I used to shake the container because it sounded like a Tic Tac thing. And I would
Yeah.
have to call my pharmacy in advance, like 3 days to get the prescription because it would be like 600 of them, 630, I think was the exact amount. And I would keep them in my safe because my secretary would say, if any people find out you have 600 oxycodes sitting at your house, you're gonna get robbed. Well, my doctor felt like, hey, that's not enough to really help his pain. Why don't we just give him fentanyl? So he prescribed me 50 milligrams of fentanyl every 3 days, and then it became 75 milligrams of fentanyl every 2 days. So I was on 20 oxys with fentanyl. And this is a funny thing. I never drank or smoked pot as a kid. Like I was never into anything like that. I was an athlete. I don't even drink coffee. I'm not even into caffeine. So,
This is extreme. This is
yeah.
nuts.
And this is a reputable doctor who has,
Yeah.
like a part of the hospital. He has like his office in, it's a pain management center, real fancy. And I realized that, this was getting kind of ridiculous. I was losing weight like crazy, as you can imagine.
Mm.
And then he gets arrested. And I tried to get my prescription somewhere else. And I figured it was like I would just go to another pain doctor and they prescribe it to me. And that's when I got the rude awakening. Like the doctor was like, and he knew I was because I've done TV commercials with my companies and things like that. So he knew, my personality, he kind of can read me really quick. And he's like, Sean, you're not going to like what I'm getting ready to tell you. He goes, but there's
Wow.
not a doctor in the United States, because this was like 2016 when the election was, and it was really big,
Yeah.
opioids. He goes, there's nobody that's going to prescribe you this. Like the chances of you getting a fentanyl prescription right now is 0 and 0, let alone,
Absolutely.
the oxys. And he said, not only that, he said, fentanyl for what you're getting should be for a cancer person who's got 5 years to live.
So that
Because
was when you decided just to go cold turkey?
yeah, because man, my doctor's like, nobody's going to give it to you. He goes,
Yeah.
but he goes, so you're going to need to go into a rehab center,
Oh my goodness. This is
right? Which that
nuts.
was never going to, yeah, right. And so my family physician actually gets me 5 patches of fentanyl. He's like doing it out of being my doctor for 20 years. He goes, get your affairs in order. This will give you 1 week to get your affairs in order, because obviously you need to go into rehab based on the fact that you can't get any, nobody's going to prescribe it. And that was on a Friday. I still have that pack of 5 up in my safe to remind me. And so I went to the beach I just called my buddies and from college and rented a beach house and went cold turkey. Went there on a Friday. By the following Wednesday, I kind of had the days figured if I could do 5 days and then 7. So I started on that Friday, and then by the following Wednesday, I was cold turkey. And if I could make it 6 days, I knew I was over the hump. They said 5 days was the real,
Was the tough one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because they compare it to
Is it just like
heroin.
a movie? Like I've never actually had to detox from anything, but is it like a movie where you get the shakes and you
Oh
kind
my
of
God, everything. You
terrible?
cannot sleep. You're
Yeah.
freezing cold. I mean, it's 100 degrees. I'm at the beach. I feel like I'm like 20 degrees below zero. You can't sleep at all.
Which
And
is
you're just
torture in itself.
agitated. Yeah, it is. No, it really is. I said thankfully I don't have any guns, because if I had one, I'd be afraid what I might do. But yeah, you can't sleep. I remember that was the hardest part. I couldn't sleep. So then
Mm.
I come back and because I have a follow-up appointment with my doctor, and I walk in and I go, I quit. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, I quit. I go, it was way too inconvenient to go to rehab for
I don't
60
have
months.
time for
I
that.
said, really? I said, I didn't have time. I said, that was the motivator.
Yeah.
The motivator was going to rehab. I just did not know how that was going to fit in my schedule. So I quit. And he said to me, because I've never had anybody quit both. He
Yeah,
said,
that's
he goes,
incredible.
yeah, he said, never, I've never had anybody cold turkey fentanyl. Like never,
Yeah.
and he said, never, ever. He said, it's unbelievable. He said, you have a prisoner of war mentality. And,
Obviously.
yeah, clearly, or
Which
I'm
is
just
might
I
have
have
something to do with being a
relations.
serial entrepreneur. Maybe it's just that, high pain, high risk threshold, high detox threshold. It all comes together as a
I
package.
think that, and I hate inconvenience. I don't like to be
Yeah,
in traffic.
absolutely.
I have no patience. The idea of just sitting into a rehab center in these little groups talking about why we're all drug addicts, my head would have exploded. So, yeah, I tried it, did it a different way.
Hats off to you. Touching much more on the entrepreneurship side of things, which obviously has been a big part of your journey as well. What do you think are the steps for a comeback? I mean, is there a process you think that comebacks kind of a trajectory, if you like, that they go along? And is it something that we all can achieve? Obviously, not everyone has the willpower and focus that you do, but is there a couple of examples of how you've really just made that comeback in various ways? And it could be, relaunching a business or starting a business from scratch at a later age. I think it's all very well to start a business in your 20s and be successful. Far harder to have all that stuff taken away from you and start again in your 40s or 50s or beyond, in my view,
Yeah,
anyway.
I agree. I try to tell people, don't take a risk in your 50s. No, I really, I believe it, because
It's more at
you don't have enough
stake.
time to
Yeah.
make, yeah, you don't have time to make it back up. And I've seen people do really dumb things financially in their 50s. And I tell them, man, beta test something really, really small. See if it works. Never put a great,
Don't mortgage your
you
house
got
on
to
it,
be
maybe.
careful. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's just not very wise to me, so I don't think that way. But I think the key to any comeback is, okay, where are you at? You got to kind of take stock of where you're at.
Yeah. Do you have to
Okay,
hit rock bottom though? You know that comeback, it is an up
I
down
don't,
thing, but there are people who might be on a downward slide in their business at the moment and know they need to pivot.
yeah, I don't think necessarily you have to be at rock bottom. Hopefully you can kind of catch that you're on the way down the sliding board, and you kind of catch yourself a little bit. So I don't think you want to wait to your rock bottom to do this, but I think you just kind of look at where you're at and you're like, okay, wait, this trajectory is not good. Like I'm going back this way, the business is not doing well, or my career is not doing well. And you kind of figure out some way to put the brakes on. And then you start creating the old thing is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Okay. How can you stop what's currently happening? And how can you move in a direction that's so motivating to you? This is the key. You have to have something that's so motivating to you that you're willing to either change or the strategy, or endure the pain of, maybe you have to do two things at once. Maybe you have to stick at your job
Yes.
while you're doing a startup. See, I don't believe you ever
Yeah.
quit a job to do a startup. You have to earn the right to quit a job. There's 168 hours in a week. So figure it out. You can split your days. You can work before you actually go to work. When you get home from work, you can work on weekends. There's so many things you can do if you're ambitious. But I think you just have to figure out what would motivate you. What would be so motivating, and yet, realistic. I think our brain, especially if we're on like a downward trajectory, our brain has a hard time accepting challenges sometimes. It quickly says, well, that's just too hard. I'll never do that. So I think you got to pick something that's challenging, but that your brain doesn't
Yes.
reject.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right.
And then, right, and set some steps that you can hit. Like, you're not going to do Rome wasn't built in a day. So let's say it's a it's a big goal to start this business. Well, maybe you break it up over 52 weeks. So it's okay. The first week I'm going to do this. Second week I'm going to do this. Third week, literally, just create an index cards and write one thing on each of these 52 index cards. And each week you work through one, and boom, then you go to the next one, just like you're going through a deck of cards. There's many ways to do that, but I believe in trying to do something where it's realistic, that you have a high probability of success, where again your brain doesn't reject it. It's something that okay, I'm not going to do this over 1 month. Okay, I'm going to set my trajectory over maybe 12 months or a year, things like that. I like massively big goals, but I think if you're on the comeback, You
Break
got to
it
hit this,
down,
you
maybe.
got to
Yeah,
get a
bite-sized
couple
pieces.
victory. Yeah, you got to get a couple victories.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in your business planning process that you rate as quite vital, and I agree, every business needs a plan. Otherwise, it's just like a bit of a dream, right? There's no goals, there's no objectives to kind of reach. But particularly in this volatile startup world, it's easy to have just a great seed of an idea and think that's going to be enough. But what's some of the processes of business planning that you think are tried and true, no matter what industry you might be in?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm like, just put as much planning into your your business plan as you would an overseas vacation. Like if you were going to plan to go to the United States and you lived in Australia or whatever, you'd put some planning into it. Okay, we're gonna leave at this time at night so that we can maybe fly through the night. We can fly through the night, maybe not be. You'd put a little bit. Am I going to fly into New York? Am I going to fly into DC? Where are we going to go visit? If you're going to do a 10-day vacation, give your business that same amount of time because you have to. There are certain things that you have to know that you cannot skip. Knowing, okay, why do you think this business is going to work? I mean, what is the data that you have that makes you believe that this is a good idea? Number two is okay, who's your competition? What are you going to do that's different than your competition? Okay, pricing. How is your pricing going to be any different from others? Okay, simple thing like that. Okay, who are you going to need to start this business? Okay, you're going to have to open the doors, or is it an internet company? I mean, who else do you need on the team? Do you need licenses? Do you need to get an LLC? Do you need to be a corporation? Things of that nature. How much money is it going to cost to launch this business? How much money is it going to cost to stay in business for 90 days? Okay, these are, I'm just going through like the very basics, but you can see where to not have any idea of some of these things, what is going to be your method of attracting
Yeah,
customers?
absolutely.
Like
And that's the
what is
big
going to
one,
be, yeah,
right?
what's
Like
going to,
this, that it's
oh, it is. If you can't attract customers, you're going to be out of business.
exactly, and I work obviously in the communications and PR industry. And, I often talk about on this show, particularly with social media, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of people that I know you genuinely have followers and you are genuinely successful in what you do, Sean. But for a lot of people, they might have a lot of followers and not one sale. And I just
Oh,
find that nuts, like what is that business about? That's a hobby.
yeah. I mean, and I always say you can kind of look if they're smoke and mirrors. Look how many people like what they promote. Look at their engage. You know what I mean? You got,
Yeah.
you need to have like more than 500 people engaged in whatever you're putting up. But in business is fairly simple. I'm going to make it really easy for your audience. I'm going to give them a quick MBA in business. 3 things. You got to do 3 things in business to be successful. Number one is you need to know how to attract customers. Get people interested in whatever it is you're selling. That's number one. If you can't do that, you'll be out of business. Number two is you have to be able to sell them. You have to be able to convert them. They have to be able to buy. If they walk around your store, that's great that they walked around. It's great that you got 50, 100 people in there. Or they're going to your website. But is it is it converting? Are people buying what it is you're selling? And then number three is, do you fulfill what it is they bought? Can you get it to them in a timely manner so that they want to do business with you again? The fulfillment part, the warranty part, the back end. That's it. That's business. Now you can make it really, really complicated, but if you can't attract customers, obviously you'll be out of business. If you can't sell customers, you will have no revenue. You will be out of business. If you promise to send this person this product on your site and you don't send it to them, the reviews are going to put you out of business. So you have to be able to fulfill it. So you have to be able to do those 3 things. And if you can't, you're going to be out of business. You cannot be weak in any of those.
No, absolutely. And I guess you just got to keep innovating, right? Innovate, or sort of, the risk is that you become irrelevant. So you get the great customers, but do you keep them? That's always my thing,
Yeah, I think you have to constantly say, what is it my customer is going to want 5 years from now? You always, you engage, you got to kind of see around, Steve Jobs said this, you got to be able to see around corners. So, just like, in America, like you had Sears and, Sears and J.C. Penney and all these stores go out of business. They stopped seeing the future. They stopped going, they didn't see the internet. Like, how did they miss that? Blockbuster Video was,
Yeah.
having these big stores, and Netflix is shipping out, 3 movies, and whenever you send them back, you send them back. And then you had Redbox with these, you could buy them right in front of every grocery store and in front of every, drugstore and things like that. And nobody at Blockbuster thought, hey, you know what? Maybe these stores are not gonna survive. They're very expensive to maintain a retail store. So yeah, you have to kind of look and see around the corner and see what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how has the war for extraordinary talent changed since you started recruiting maybe your first staff in your first business years ago? And I think from, someone who's obviously worked in multiple entrepreneurship entities, what do you think matters most to help great people stay with you? Because I think it's a lot harder to find people that are fabulous that are going to stay with you for the long term than it was perhaps a decade ago. And that's partly COVID, the great resignation, but it's also just what you can offer them. People want a two-way thing. It's not just about money and a job
It's
title these
not.
days.
Yeah, there's so many things that keep people with you. I've just a few that I know that some people it's money. Okay, it is. There's no doubt about it. Number two is some people it's flexibility. I have a guy who works for me. He wants to get home so he can take his son to football practice. And that's important. I've had guys who want to take their kids, didn't want to miss any of their kids' baseball games. I had a secretary who during the spring loved to ride horses, so I'd let her out early. Whatever it is, so that's people want flexibility. That's really important. Some people want a seat at the table in that you want them to run a division. Well, they want to be involved in the decision making.
Yeah.
They want to feel like they're involved in whatever direction we're going. They want to have some input in it. Some people just want to be a part of a team. I mean, they love that team concept. If you validate them and, hey, Johnny, we could have never done this without you. It's just so great that that's enough. Some people love that. There's a variety of reasons why people will stay with you, and you better find out which language works with different people because everybody is different. I used to think it was purely money, and flexibility is every bit as valuable as money.
Yeah.
I have learned. Some people want ownership, and there's nothing you're going to pay them that's going to equal. They want a piece of the pie.
Mm.
Okay, they know they're going to help you grow that pie, and they want a piece of that pie. So that might be whatever it takes, but you got to think.
Maybe you just need to ask people too, right? Or do you think people come to you these days and, that relationship with the boss is kind of a bit different now? People will quite openly say, these are my non-negotiables, or this is what I'm asking for.
And I ask them that anyway, because I'm like, I don't want to waste our time. I mean, I ask it very quickly in the interview process. I always say, listen to me, what do I need to offer you that's going to make you happy?
Yeah.
In other words, for us to leave this conference room and you to take this job, what is it? What do you want? Let's, beat around. I said, it's going to be really easy. You may ask for something I'm not willing to give you. Sometimes people ask for something that will totally ruin the entire, salary structure that you have because it's too high. And if anybody else finds out this person's getting that, you're going to have a mass exodus.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do that. The other thing I like to do with existing employees is I constantly say, hey, what's going to make you happy to the point where you're still here 5 years from now?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing within our organization? That's so exciting.
And do a lot of people have that vision? Like, do you think people think 5 years is too long these days?
I do, and I say to them, they go, well, I haven't really thought about that. And I go, but I want you to. What about your job do you really like? What about your job do you not like? I just ask them, like, what would you prefer not to be doing that we have you doing? So you got to dig down a little bit. And they go, well, this part of the job I really don't like, but I love this part. Okay, well, then we need to phase you out of this over the next 12 months. I need you to be patient with me. But now that you've shared that with me, it's 100% on my radar. And I'm going to put together a plan in place so that you do less of this and more of that. You got to engage. The problem, what we do is we wait for people to come to us when they're ready to quit. They already have a job offer. And then we start throwing them everything. They're like, well, why didn't you offer me that? Why did it take me getting ready to quit for you to offer me that? You can't. You got to be proactive on the retaining talent. That's an active muscle that you better keep engaged.
Absolutely. Changing tack a little bit, I'm a believer that most people have got through their businesses and their careers to date because they've had one or two fantastic mentors, and sometimes they're formal, sometimes they're family members, sometimes they're just people they've seen on TEDx, believe it or not. But do you have one or two that kind of stand out for you and why?
Yeah, I think, I've read tons and tons of books. So so I look at that, like if it's leadership, I love what John Maxwell, has to say. And I listen to guys like Ed Milet. And so I try to just get a variety of that. But now in my own personal life, I've worked with great people. Like my first person I worked for right out of college, I'll never forget. I come to a staff meeting, and I thought I knew everything, of course, right? And so I brought him all these problems that I noticed. And I remember him saying to me, Sean, don't bring me a problem that you haven't come up with 2 solutions for. I love that. Yeah, don't bring me a problem.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. I'm going to
yeah,
take that.
don't because problems, we can find them all day long. Bring me a problem with
Yeah.
2 solutions. And so, I've been around sharp people, and I've had business partners that were, better in certain areas than me. So I've always just tried to.
That's important, though. I think that's great to sort of, not have a mirror
Yeah,
image of
they're
yourself in a
opposite, and they're
business.
smarter than me in areas that I'm not as smart, and there's areas that have strengths. So what I've done more than anything regarding the mentoring is I've always surrounded myself with business partners. I have partners in all my businesses, and that's allowed me to kind of not have to be great at everything. So I don't, I
Yeah.
can stay in my strike zone.
Don't have to be a master of
Right. My
everything.
strike zone is probably recruiting and retaining talent and getting things
Yeah.
off the ground. And then I get bored and I want somebody
Yeah.
else to take it over, and then I want to go start something else. But they're probably the things I do really well. And I think today you're right when you talk about TEDx. You can find an author that just speaks in a way that you really like, or you may find somebody who hosts a podcast that talks in a way that gets you further down the road. I mean, this day and age, we have so many resources. Good golly. I mean, we have so many voices. We don't have lack of information. We have lack of execution. Okay. We don't have an information problem. We can go on YouTube and be, mentored by God. We can watch people that, obviously aren't even alive anymore and listen to their great speeches and things of that nature. We just have a failure to execute. That tends to be the problem.
Absolutely. If we spoke again in 1 year's time, Sean, what would be your number one goal that you hope to have achieved, and why is that important to you?
I'm working on a few things. I mean, I'd like to possibly pull off my weekend MBA event one more time. That was the hardest thing I think I've done in the last decade. And number 2 would be I'm franchising one of my companies. So they would be the 2 that would stand out. If I accomplish one out of the 2, it would be a really good 12 months because they're very ambitious goals. But they're the 2 that are in my foremost right now, is franchising one of my companies and trying to pull the weekend MBA off again.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So, final takeaway message for us today on the politics of comebacks. If anyone out there is facing one and they may be, not in the position you are right now at the top of the pinnacle, what would you say to them?
You can do it. I mean, no matter what happened, no matter where it is, typically what happens is our self-esteem's at its lowest and we don't think we can. And I'm just telling you, you got to figure out a way to get a victory, a small victory. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
And you got to get habits that make you feel like you're maybe that's jumping out of bed in the morning, exercising. You got to get little victories. I don't care where they are. You got to start getting some victories, some self-discipline victories, some little things. And you'll be shocked where you're at a year from now. We always want the comeback to happen quickly. It generally doesn't. So just try to set some obtainable goals and break the year into 90-day segments. So that way you'll get more done. So set some goals for the next 90 days. When you get through those, set some goals for the next 90 days, and typically improve your habits. Generally, when we start slipping back, and the reason why we have the problem, we got some bad habits. Whether that's just we're lazy, or, we've lost some ambition, whatever the case may be. Get better habits. Get better
Absolutely.
habits. Break the year into 4 chunks, and try to get some wins under your belt.
Look, I've loved our conversation today, and I'm sure our audience has had some great value takeaways as well. If you do want to connect further with Sean, of course, there'll be some details on the show notes. As always, until next time, take care. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.